If you want to become a visual artist, if you want to become an oil painter or anything in the fine arts field, you need to be aware of some of the challenges and the things that are going to definitely frustrate you along the way. But if you can overcome the things I'm going to talk about today, it can be very rewarding. Now, before I get into this too much, I want to quickly mention that if you do want to learn more about my process or just about oil painting in general, you can go over to my Patreon page and learn all about my methods, how I go about my particular oil painting practice, and a lot of different drawing tutorials that use oil paint through the whole process that will really help you along your journey to becoming an oil painter. One of the first things that comes to mind that I think is a challenge or can be very frustrating is the understanding that art is very subjective. When you're first starting out, I'm sure you're trying to please everybody. You want your artwork to be received well by a wide variety of people, but you should definitely realize that because artwork is subjective, it's not going to be appreciated by everybody. You need to find a subject matter that speaks to you and then go from there. You don't want to worry about satisfying everybody that looks at your work. And the point where frustration can set in is when you start to speak your mind with your artwork and it's not universally understood. It's not accepted by everybody. And at this point, what can possibly happen is you start to lose confidence in the direction you're going. You might think you're on the wrong path, but you just need to remember that it is subjective. What you're creating is subjective. Not everybody's going to like it. It's going to take some time to really find out if there's something there that's worth sharing and worth pursuing. And take it from me, I experience this all the time where people will look in my studio space and walk right out. There's a lot of open studio nights where people can go in and out of many different studios in my building. And I'll have plenty of people that come in and check it out and just love what I'm creating. But there are just about as many that will come in, take one quick glance and walk right out. And that's part of the game. You don't want to try to please everybody, because if you do try to please everyone, you end up not really creating anything that interesting, and it might just blend into the crowd of other artwork that's out there. Another reason why I think it can be fairly frustrating to be a visual artist is the financial instability of this career choice. Now, that obviously depends on where you decide to go with your visual arts. If you're going to be a fine artist, I think that's probably going to be one of the most difficult paths to go down. I know when I first started to show my work, it didn't sell whatsoever. There were quite a few years where I was showing my work over and over again on Instagram or to places locally, and it doesn't really sell because, first off, I didn't really have a established voice yet, and I also didn't have an established identity as an artist. And there's a few ways to overcome this obstacle. One is to obviously have a full-time job or a part-time job that brings in some money while you're trying to figure out your voice or get your artwork out into the world. And while this is happening, you can start building up your business in the fine art world. Is it going to take a little extra time out of your day to basically have two jobs? Definitely. But if you're one of those people that just knows you want to become a fine artist or you want to become some sort of visual artist, I don't think that's going to be an obstacle for most of you. I think if you know for sure this is what you're destined to do, you should definitely not give up and just enjoy the struggle and the journey that comes along with finding that financial stability. And with that comes having to look at your art practice as a business. Just like any other business that gets started, it's going to take a good couple of years to even make a little bit of money with that business. So you have to keep that mindset of knowing that you're going to have to market. You're going to have to get yourself out there, get as many people in front of your work as possible so that that financial instability starts to slowly go away. And then you start to see that you're making money and you're starting to find yourself in a position where you can go from full-time to part-time with your second job. And then maybe that part-time job goes to just maybe consulting on the side along with your artwork. And then eventually you might even become a full-time artist. And that is the struggle that we all go through at some point. I know many people that have done this in many different ways, so don't think there's one correct way to get to that point where you can be a full-time artist. Something else that's very challenging that you're going to definitely have to overcome is self-doubt and criticism. I think every artist has had somebody out there that has told them their artwork is awful It's happened to me here and there, but you definitely need to look at the person giving you criticism. Now, if this is somebody that is a professional fine artist, they know a ton about the arts in general, then you probably need to listen to them to some degree. Does that mean that you need to quit right away? No, of course not. I think it's just a place where you need to buckle down and reevaluate where you're at with your work. And they may have some good suggestions, and it may actually make your artwork better. But at the same time, this criticism can lead to self-doubt. And I have to really strongly suggest that you just try to stay confident in your vision of your work. You need to be objective about where you're at with your work and where you think it can go. But just know that if you have the drive to be an artist, all that self-doubt should be put to the wayside, and just keep pushing through that and know that you can get to that point where you want to be. And this is something I have to remind myself all the time, because not only is there criticism coming from the outside, there's also criticism coming from within. I think that's a lot of my own personal struggle, is I am my own worst critic. And that can be a good thing. I think that's a good thing to have because it'll make your artwork better. But at the same time, it has kind of stopped me in my tracks and put a lot of self-doubt in my own mind. But I've learned time and time again, if I just keep painting, if I keep pushing through that, eventually on the other side, it will all be worth it. Another big aspect to becoming a visual artist or a fine artist is there are a lot of hours where you are working alone in your studio. Now, this could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on the kind of person you are. Me personally, I'm an introvert, so I don't mind the hours of working alone by myself. But for those of you that are more extroverts that really like to have a lot of people around you, it's going to be difficult to isolate yourself and come up with all of these artistic decisions on your own. So be aware that this may be one of the harder parts of being an artist for you if you are not used to being alone for many hours during the day. And finally, something that can really get in the way of your creativity is trying to balance your creative innovation with creating something that is commercially viable. Now, what does that mean to be commercially viable? Well, for a lot of artists, they think day in and day out about what sells. And some artists, like myself, try to put that out of their mind. I'm trying to create something that is impactful, full of emotion, that has a psychological feeling to it. And that can get in the way of being a product that is commercially viable. Now, what I will say to that is, when you try to stand out from the crowd and make something that is unique and maybe doesn't have that typical commercial feel to it, you're going to find that there are buyers out there that want that kind of work, that want something extremely unique because they're unique as well. And they appreciate people that put something out in the world that doesn't blend in with the crowd. Now, does that mean you can't make some compromises to maybe find a way to push the envelope as far as what you're trying to say, but also throw in a couple little tweaks to make it a little bit more appealing to a wider audience? Absolutely not. You can definitely do that. Just be aware of how much you're doing it and how much you are compromising your own vision. And that's just some of the challenges that you may find when you're becoming a visual artist. Now, if you want to learn more about my particular way of painting or how I approach each of my portraits, go over and check out my Patreon page. There's tons of tutorials and painting sessions that will really help you figure out the oil painting process. Thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. I will talk to you again very soon.